Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Introduction to Youth-Adult Partnership webinar. Let's see, it looks like people are able to hear us, but if we could just get all the folks that just joined us to just type into your chat and let us know if you can hear us. And my name's Ashley McAllister. I'm the program manager at the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance. Great, sounds like people can hear, wonderful. So OSBHA, we are offering this webinar through a contract with the School-Based Health Center State Program Office. And in addition to today's webinar, we'll be offering a webinar called Creating, Engaging, and Powerful YAC Projects. And that's going to be on Thursday, March 15th from 9:30 to 10:30. So we'll follow up with more information on that. So to start off, I have a few housekeeping details. First, you should all be muted, but just make sure that you have the capability to unmute yourself. So just make sure you didn't already do that. Make sure you're muted. And then also just take a look, you have a Q&A feature. So when you click up to that Q&A feature, you can type in questions throughout the webinar, and we will have specific times for questions, but go ahead and type questions in at any point and then we'll make sure to get to those. And if you're calling in, make sure that you're not putting us on hold at any point. So I think that should be it, and I am ready to introduce you to our speakers, Liz Thorne and Haylee Williams. And there they are. So first I'm going to introduce you to Haylee Williams, who is a student health advocates coach at OSBHA. Haylee has been active as a youth leader at OSBHA since 2015, where she has worked on local policy, developed trainings, worked with health professionals to create ad campaigns, and testified at the state capitol. Haylee graduated from Tigard High School in 2015, where she was a member of the SHAC, and she is the 2017 through 2018 student health coach. She is also a student at Portland Community College. And Liz Thorne is the VP of Policy and Programs at Karen Guidance, and she is passionate about creating environments where all young people can reach their full potential. Liz received her master's in public health at Portland State University and has been working in the field of adolescent health for over a decade. Liz's experience ranges from leading youth-driven research at Portland State University to providing strategic direction on school and adolescent health issues at the Oregon Public Health Division. As VP of Policy and Programs at Karen Guidance, Liz works with education and health entities at the national, state, and local levels to drive systems change through policy research, best practice, and partnership. So Liz is going to go over today's objectives.
Thanks, Ashley, and welcome everybody. We're really happy to be here. So as Ashley mentioned, this is really kind of a 101 on best practices around youth-adult partnerships, just to get folks to a common understanding and a shared definition of what we mean when we say youth-adult partnership. So our objectives today are to define youth-adult partnerships, and then for folks to be able to articulate the benefits of youth-adult partnerships at the youth, adult, and organizational level, talk about some of those key best practices in building youth-adult partnerships, and discuss some of the potential challenges and ingredients for success. And so for those folks on the webinar today, we've really directed this to YAC coordinators, since we know that's the majority of folks that are on, but we think that the information is going to be applicable to anybody working with young people and interested in building youth-adult partnerships. And also for those of you who are recipients of the YAC mental health grants, we're going to be doing a much deeper dive into all of these components during the two-day training, April 5th and 6th, for folks that will be focusing on youth-adult partnerships, as well as participatory action research, which fits really nicely with what we're talking about today. So just for everybody, this is kind of a 101. It's meant to be pretty high level, and then we'll dive deeper in the two-day training. All right, so this is a prompt for you all. We all have different experiences working with young people. Some of us might have been working with young people in a partnership capacity for decades, while this might be newer to some others. So I'm really interested in hearing about what you define the adult partnership as. So type into your chat box the first word or phrase that pops into your mind when I say youth adult partnerships. We'll give you a minute to type those in. Mentoring, and I love that I can see it right here, yeah. Advertisement and mentorship, okay. Coaching. Positive reinforcement. Relationship building, guiding, helping you. Great. Yeah, so collaborative, trust, guidance between youth and adult. Yeah, absolutely. Those are definitely empathy for sure. Those are definitely some of the key themes that that really define youth adult partnership. I don't know, Haley, do you have anything else? What pops into your mind when we say youth adult partnership?
When I think of youth adult partnership, I definitely think of like mentors, people that are working one-on-one with us and work with us like throughout like a certain amount of time, like through a project or like someone said relationships. So I think,
yeah. Yeah. And so for folks who are watching this, we are going to have this be a very informal webinar, almost podcast stylish. So that's the vibe that we're going for. So hopefully you're picking up on that vibe. All right, next slide, Ashley. Thank you. So yeah, you all really touched on it. So when we talk about youth adult partnerships, a lot of the terminology that folks might have heard is youth engagement, youth engagement, youth engagement. But really, when we're talking about youth adult partnership, we're wanting to shift from an engagement model where it's really still adults doing to youth. So an adult engaging a youth, and instead shift to more of a partnership model. And so it's more about sharing power and building off of what young people are already doing. So it's not necessarily about youth totally leading the charge on their own or adults having like this proper years of wisdom and years of experience, but rather all participants, regardless of their age, having a legitimate opportunity to bring their talents, skills, and interests together. And the partnership piece is the critical term. And that's really an enhancement of the voices of both adults and young people. And so this is a definition of youth adult partnership from Being Yap Savvy. That's a great document and a great tool for folks if you're interested. And so it's involving youth and adults in responsible, challenging collective action that seeks to benefit the organization or larger community. The opportunity to engage in planning, decision-making, and action consistent with their interests and skills. And that last piece is really important to kind of think about the activities of a youth adult partnership around planning, decision-making, and action, and making sure that it's consistent with their interests and skills. So as a YAP coordinator, thinking about how are you gauging what your young people are interested in and what their skills are in. Next slide. So another really key component about youth adult partnerships is that it occurs along a spectrum. And so some folks who've been in the youth development world for a while or have read of different theories or different models of youth adult partnership, you might be familiar with the ladder model, with the bottom rung being sort of tokenism and the top rung being complete youth-led. And so this model, which is more kind of updated, is kind of shifting away from that ladder or hierarchical perspective because it's not necessarily it's not always the best or what's most doable in your organization to have something be completely youth-led and completely youth-driven. So this is the typology of youth participation and empowerment, or the type pyramid. And so on the left, if you're looking at the screen, it's at the bottom left is complete adult control. And so at the bottom there is a vessel. So young people are a vessel and adults have all control, and there is zero youth voice and youth participation. An example of this might be like if you're a young person in a juvenile justice situation or juvenile detention. And then as you move up to the top of the pyramid, the empowerment of the young person is increasing. And so that moves up to symbolic, the spectrum. So this is youth have a voice, but adults still have most control. And typically, this is where a lot of the youth engagement work in schools happen. And then moving up towards the top of the pyramid is shared control. So that's the pluralistic. And that's kind of a sweet spot of youth-adult partnerships that we try to get to, or that we really are seeing as a nice place to be. And then as you move down the right side of the pyramid, you are continuing to, if you're moving from the bottom right up, it's total youth control. So the bottom right is autonomous. So this is like youth organizing is a really good example of that. So youth are making all of the decisions, adults have very little control. And then as you go up the pyramid from the right, you're increasing adult empowerment. So then in between there is independence. Youth have voice and an active role, and adults give youth most of the control. So you can see that, we have the two extremes of total adult control, total youth control. And as we move up the pyramid, trying to find that place where we're really sharing power together. And so the key takeaway here, and I have to give credit to Julie Petrakubi of Education Northwest, who this slide came from and also has helped sort of shape these talking points. The idea that youth-adult partnerships are situational. So you have to really consider the purpose of the partnership and be really authentic and be really clear and transparent with your young people about what it is. So for example, if you're working in a school and you want to have youth participate in a policy development process, but the final sign-off lives with the school board, it would be really inauthentic to tell youth that, we want this to be a youth-driven policy process. We want you to, share all of this information, but not state, but the adults still have the control here, so being really clear about giving the parameters of what that's going to look like. And then since most folks on the webinar are working in a school system, thinking about how can you use that symbolic kind of youth voice space that we typically see in schools and elevate that to a place of youth-adult partnership and shared power. And participatory action research is a really nice way to kind of get folks moving that way. And there it is, pluralistic. All right, so some of the benefits of youth-adult partnerships, and I'm really going to talk about what, all of these best practices and findings are really what are culled out of the literature on youth development and youth-adult partnerships, and then also just from, years of experience in doing this work. And so one of the things that I love so much about youth-adult partnerships is that it does have benefits at multiple levels with young people who participate, the adults who participate, and then even at the organizational and community level. So at the youth level, we know that active engagement and volunteer service and working in close collaboration with supportive adults can increase school performance, increase self-concept, and also decrease kind of the quote-unquote risk behaviors, or what I like to refer to as like the grant outcomes. So, decrease in substance use, decrease in feelings of depression or negative emotion, decrease in risky sexual health behaviors. And a lot of that comes from building up this sense of safety and belonging. So if you can create spaces in schools and communities where young people feel connected and that they belong, that is just such a huge protective factor for all of the arrays of challenges that young people face. And again, we know that that connection to a supportive adult is always one of the key indicators and protective factors. And it also increases young people's sort of engagement in their community and in civics and applying their own life to larger social, economic, and political structures. And it also helps them to build connections with peers, their community, and with leaders. And at the adult level, it really increases the ability and commitment of adults to address local issues, particularly those that involve youth. And it challenges leaders to increase their own awareness about issues that are facing young people and motivates them to want to hear more from young people. And it also helps to challenge commonly held beliefs by some adults about young people, maybe that they're lazy or that they don't care, they're just entitled. And then when they see young people come and share maybe the findings of a survey or a photo voice project, or speaking their mind, and they're very planned, and then they're like, oh wow, this is amazing, we want more of this, we want to hear from more young people. And so it helps them to develop a new respect for youth who are coming and speaking their expertise and speaking their truth, and also creates more advocates for more youth engagement and more youth involvement. And at the organizational level, particularly for those organizations that are addressing the needs of youth, so schools, youth serving organizations, city and state, local government, can help make them more responsive to the needs of young people and reflect their critical interests, concerns, and priorities, and really start to infuse an expectation that if decisions are being made about young people, that young people are at the table or at least involved at some level. I don't know, from like the youth perspective, thinking about benefits that you've had, do those resonate with you?
Definitely. I mean, just even thinking about how, well, I'm 20 now, how the expectation of us is to like be these adults who are already leaders and we're already in these positions where we're all amazing. I think it's kind of unrealistic when we don't have a foundation and we don't build up to that point. And I think YouthAdult partnerships provide that. And then also it just gives us a sense of security, I think, and it allows us to grow within ourselves. So then later on, when we're actually doing work in the community, we're better able to help serve that. That's how I see the value in adult partnerships. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Ashley, I'm pointing to Ashley who's behind the computer. From the organizational level, do you want to speak to anything that you have seen just having more young people be involved at the state level?
Yeah, absolutely. So here at the Oregon School-Based Health Alliance, we really believe that, the youth voice is a critical component that informs our programming and our policy and our advocacy. And because youth are the primary recipients of school-based health center services, we believe that programming and training and policy work that we do should always include that youth perspective. So we've prioritized that by partnering with our student health advocates, which Haley is the coach of, and the Statewide Youth Action Council. And both of those provide opportunities for youth to partner with us on developing trainings and events and identifying youth health needs. And that's just like a critical partnership for us.
Cool. And for folks on the webinar, I will send out when we're done. I made a little handy handout that goes over a lot of these sort of key components and benefits. So you can feel free to use this language as you work in your own community to build support for youth adult partnerships. And we'll get more into that into the next slides. Go ahead and move to the next slide. So drilling down a little bit more and thinking about some of the key ingredients to build a successful youth-adult partnership. These are some of the key points that are necessary for them to flourish. And again, these are based in research and experience, and then Haley's going to connect these to her own lived experience on 2 different student health kind of advocacy groups. And so this is, again, really directed at sort of the YAC, or the Youth-Adult Partnership Coordinator. And so 1, it's super necessary and critical to pay attention to the logistics of the group as well as group dynamics. So it goes without saying that young people live very complex, changing, and dynamic lives. So you have to be flexible and be able to adapt to that. And there's going to be continual behind the scenes work. Folks who've been working with young people and youth groups over the years know that this is true. And so kind of a good gauge on time is that we typically estimate a 2-to-1 ratio for contact time to prep time. So, if you meet with your YAC group for an hour every week, there's probably going to be at least 2 hours of coordinator behind the scenes time to get ready for that meeting, make sure that, the room is set up, that the agenda is in place, if you have a speaker coming in, that they're all set, copies are made, follow-ups to all of the members to make sure that they're able to attend, all of those types of things. And then again, be prepared to take on multiple roles in working with the Youth Adult Partnership. 1 minute you might be the coordinator, you might be the facilitator, you might be a mentor, like a lot of folks thought of when we talked about the definition of Youth Adult Partnerships, a troubleshooter, and an advisor. So it's really playing and wearing a lot of different hats. And then secondly, be sure to create ongoing opportunities for collective reflection that are both formal and informal. So thinking about kind of those formal opportunities, these are like your regular meeting So you meet once a week, or doing a retreat. I know some YACs have done like a day-long retreat or maybe over a weekend if you can swing that, to really help to build those personal connections with each other. And then informal check-ins, which can include, just a phone call if you're only meeting weekly, having some time to check in either via text or social media or even email, just to check in with folks and see how they're going. And the benefits for this are, of course, bonding, so that they feel like there's a strong personal connection to folks in their group and to you as the YAC coordinator. And it also helps to raise critical consciousness about community and school and problem solving. So if you run into an issue with your YAC group, you wanted to do, a survey in the school perhaps, and the school didn't let you. If you don't have time to sort of discuss that and reflect on it, it can start to sort of breed potentially some anger, some frustration among the YAC members if there isn't that time to really process that. It also helps keep everybody on the same page, and it's also an opportunity to build skills. So you might use some of these reflection times or meeting times to build skills on a certain research method, or if they have interests in learning more about social media and how to use Twitter to do marketing and outreach or recruitment. That might be a nice opportunity to build some of those skills. Or even doing role playing for like an interview question, practicing doing a webinar like this. And then finally, and I think most importantly, as a coordinator, you really have to affirmatively address issues of power and role. And so this comes out in the research that those that avoid discussions of power and role or pretend that they don't exist will really flounder. And there's a couple of different levels of this. So one, there's power and role within the group, within the actual YAC group, right? So there's already an inherent power differential when there's a young person, a group of young people working with an adult. So you have to talk about that. And then you also have to address power issues and role within the group. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to have, dedicated and defined positions in your committee, like a president, vice president, treasurer? Or is it going to be more egalitarian, and how do you make decisions? Is it based on, majority rule, or is it a try for consensus? So all of those really need to be talked about and thought of in advance. And then secondarily, kind of zooming out, you have to address that there are hierarchical structures, particularly if you're working in a school, and expect some pushback and help the young people to navigate that. So again, that there are going to be kind of those power brokers or those influential people in school. It might be a principal, it might be, somebody working in a school-based health center. It could be a number of things, but helping young people to identify who those power brokers or those leverage points are and make sure that they're on your team. And you also have to acknowledge for your youth that other adults working around you might not be used to working with young people in more of a partnership capacity, especially in a school. In a school, there's some very well-defined sort of like roles, like the teacher teaches the students and the students take the information in. So I think that it's really important to help, discuss that and talk about that and create a space where that can be navigated. Does that resonate with you, Haley?
Yes, it does. Especially the part, I know just like from my own experience, figuring out how the roles of power are going to operate in the group. With my group at the high school, we definitely didn't have that conversation prior to establishing and divvying out those roles. So it was very awkward, and no one really knew how to navigate or work in the group after that. So it became awkward, and then nobody really wanted to show up, or nobody really, no one knew exactly what their role was and what the boundaries were for that role. Mm-hmm. And so it was, we kind of disconnected as a group from then on. So I think, like you said, definitely talking about that way ahead and in advance, sort of laying out, or deciding as a group, or either just laying it out beforehand what this club or group is going to look like would be most helpful for everyone involved.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a really great quote. It's on the handout that I'll email out to folks. That's from Shep Zeldin, who's one of the main researchers on YouthAdult partnerships. And And he says, too often, adults with institutional power are able to consume the project, shut it down, or frame it as an adorable performance of student voice. The lesson is clear that youth-adult partnership team first need to identify who has institutional and other types of influential power in the larger organization and get them on board with the project. And creating new champions helps to grant legitimacy to your project and offers an institutional buffer when conflicts arise. It's a good one, right? All right. So I'll turn it over to Haley to talk about, kind of what she sees as ingredients for a successful coordinator, and then we can talk more about that.
Yes. Okay. So my first point is compassion. I mean, it kind of goes without saying, but it'd be nice to know that you guys actually care about us as like people. I feel like, especially because, well, I guess I should give background on how I was a part of my shack at my school. Well, I was actually part of another club called the Tiger Stud Group, and it was Students Against Underage Drinking and Driving. We had our own little conference going on, and then there were some shack people from another school who showed up, and I got to talking to them, and they recruited me, and I became part of the shack club, the Tiger, that way. And this was my senior year of high school. I moved to Portland area that year, so I was very new. And so joining the shack was great for me because I felt like it would kind of help me figure out who I was in the community, kind of feel out the vibe of the school, see kind of the ins and outs. And I think it would have been nice to connect more with some of the coordinators or just the people at school who are involved in that kind of work in general. And I think schools in general don't really provide that kind of opportunity for students to connect with each other one-on-one like that, or just as a whole. So I made compassion my first point just because I think that's a great place to start. And a lot of students come from homes or their own environments where they don't have that. So school is the only place in which they could possibly receive that. And I also ask that you be patient with us. Because I mean, in high school, we're already making a lot of decisions. They kind of advertise it as like, this is it, make or break. And I feel a lot of us carry a lot of pressures that are unknown to our peers or the adults in our lives. And sometimes when we join a club or we are part of a project, we can be flaky. And drop the ball a lot. And I just ask that you be patient with us. And what I don't see enough of is sometimes we're reprimanded for it, but I think what would be helpful for us is kind of breaking that down. Like, you didn't show up to the meeting, this is kind of the outcome of you not showing up, and emphasizing that you're here to guide us through, said project, and kind of breaking down okay, why didn't you show up? How can I help you to show up next time? Yeah, I think that would be a better way. So you didn't show up, lose 10 points or whatever, right. Or you're no longer the treasurer and taking away, their role in the group. I think more of a breakdown of the consequences of, dropping the ball and saying, okay, let's build you up to show up. Right. I think that would be most helpful. And I also ask that you be sympathetic and empathetic with us. A lot of us are on social media. There's a lot going on, even just yesterday with school shootings and all those things. And we're taking it in all the time. We're constantly on these things. I also feel like we don't talk enough about those kind of experiences that are happening to other people, but that do affect us. Because if other schools are unsafe, we're thinking, okay, is our school next? Yeah. And sort of kind of breaking down what we see in the media and how that affects us, and just validating our feelings in general would just be helpful. And then, and I think checking in at the beginning of meetings, asking each other as a youth, prompting us to ask, youth to youth, hey, how are you doing, so-and-so, and then you as a coordinator also being in on that conversation of checking in with each other. teaching us how to connect with our peers, which is sometimes difficult.
For sure.
Which is weird. But that would be great to have during meetings. And being proactive, I think, would also be helpful. Like, I noticed sometimes with our SHAC or YAC, there were some projects that we wanted to, to work on or create ourselves. And then there was, I feel like it was one of the points in like the spectrum where we had too much control and then we didn't know where to go, and the whole project just kind of collapsed. And so just being proactive and being there for us throughout that process would be helpful. And then in general, just empowering us to make our own decisions. And because high school is a really big transition time and sort of setting us up for that next step. I think I'm going to talk about it later, but I guess I can talk about it now. I'm one of those people where I like the big picture of everything that's going on. And if I am part of a project and I have a specific role, I like time to digest that role and kind of brainstorm ways in which I can better contribute to that. A lot of people just jump right in and they're great at it. I think also being aware that some students process information differently and prepare for presentations or projects or anything differently would be a good thing for a coordinator to know. And then to also support that youth in whatever process it takes them to, complete a project would be helpful. So
Yeah.
Thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I think we talked about earlier, so again, for the coordinator, just having an understanding of, those systems of your group, and then also knowing their interests and skills, and also, like Haley said, how they take in information and how they process stuff so that you can make sure and adapt the meetings or the follow-up or the homework to help support all different learners and all different styles. So this is a question for you all. And again, many of you have been doing this work for many years and some of you are newer. So just type into your chat box, what are some of the challenges that you might encounter in building this youth-adult partnership as a part of your work? Or they could be challenges that you have experienced in the past. Really, we would just want to know kind of what makes you nervous about this work, or what's a fear that you have. I'll give you a minute to type those in. Having enough time. Yep, absolutely. Any other challenges? I know time is a big one. Getting youth to attend consistently, keeping members engaged and actively participating, showing up consistently. Yep. There's a disconnect at times to not get along. It can be challenging to work together. Sometimes grants specify the topic, so it doesn't allow, so it's not, authentically from theirs. Yep, I can speak to that. How to approach difficult conversations when conflicts do arise, and keeping them engaged. Yep, absolutely. Those are all super common challenges that arise in this work. And let's see, some youth are more vocal and take over conversation versus more quiet youth. Yeah, absolutely. So some of those, how do you manage group dynamics pieces is really important. Great, thank you for doing that. Let's move on to the next slide. And you really called out consistently, number one, the challenge that I've heard in my experience, and that comes out in the research as well as time. So particularly for those folks that are doing participatory action research projects, I remember years ago, I heard from a group that was like, oh, well, we're meeting, once a week for about 30 to 45 minutes after school. And I remember saying to them, well, frankly, I think it's going to be really hard for you to be able to do a YPAR project in that amount of time, unless you do something that's a little bit unique and think about how you use your time. So some potential strategies around time are, I've seen groups that get so much work done if they have 4 hours or 6 hours carved out and they can do a retreat and they do fun team building activities and they get a big chunk of work done. And then also assigning homework. I've seen groups that are really effective at, and this is a kind of twofer, managing your time well and also keeping young people engaged using social media or texting. Slack is a great resource, SLACK. It's a free kind of online, it's almost like instant messaging, but you can have different topic threads. So you can have, you know, a YPAR thread or a YAC thread, or if you're planning a outreach day, you can have an outreach day thread that's just the team members that are assigned to that, you know, and you can just type in messages and people can, when they log on, they see the whole thread of conversation. I know a lot of groups who've used GroupMe as a good platform as well. And then just really leveraging, what was the name of that again? Oh, it was Slack, SLACK, and it's a free app. And then doing check-ins over the phone. So again, like we talked about, just having that connection time, but then that's also, you know, it can be just a quick text like, hey, reminder that meeting is next week and that you said you would bring the agenda, something like that. And any other thoughts on time?
Yeah, just on time.
Or anything, yeah.
Oh, okay. Wait, did we go through all of them already? Okay, no, okay. Yeah, in doing that within the shack will actually just teach us how to do that on our own.
Yeah.
Like with our own homework, with our own, managing our own projects and our own, our own like jobs and things like that. And it's already teaching us, you know, what is that? Professional development skills.
Yeah.
As I like to say.
Professional development, yeah. Totally skill building.
So, yeah, so having that in the shack is a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, for me, when I was in high school, I was kind of disorganized, not the person that likes things organized. So having someone that could get that ball started for me.
Yeah, and kind of show you how to do it. Yeah, like provide different ways of doing it. Yeah. So another challenge that I heard, or I have heard, and it might be relevant for YAC coordinators, is that, you know, you might be a county staff, so you're not necessarily connected to the day-to-day operations of the school or even the school-based health center because you're not there every day. So a couple of strategies that that we came up with was really finding an ally in the school or the school-based health center. So again, going back to finding who those power brokers are, who those key folks in the school are, and getting them on board. And also talking with the principal about the benefits of youth-adult partnership, your project and what you're doing, and just being really clear and upfront and say, you know, if there's a challenge or something comes up, please, you know, reach out to me. This is how often we're meeting, these are what we're doing, and just try to create those partnerships and connections as much as you can.
Yeah. And just to add to that, like when you are seeking out those partnerships and relationships with people in the school, I think taking even a few of the youth that are interested along to do that would be great. It would be great practice for when we as the SHA meet with legislators. You know, it's, you know, if you're doing that at the shack and you're talking to the principal, like you're one step ahead already.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that'd be a great thing.
Mm-hmm. And then the recruitment and keeping youth engaged. This is a really, I mean, we talked about this when we met yesterday too. This is a really hard and challenging thing to do. So some of the strategies we came up with, again, social media. First of all, use it wisely and leverage it well. So if you are a YAC coordinator or a school-based health center, you're like, hey, we have a Facebook page. Now what? You have to make sure.
I'm sorry.
You have to make sure that it's relevant and resonating with your young people. If they're like, yeah, we don't use Facebook, but we really use Instagram. Yeah, we're on Instagram, or we're like, I prefer a text message. Like, again, understanding the needs of youth in your group. And then also, how can you use social media as a recruitment strategy? So, you know, taking fun videos, having youth members Snapchat, and tagging the school's handles or whatever. I don't even, is that on Snapchat? Are there handles on Snapchat?
No, but there's hashtags.
There's hashtags.
And, like, you can, like, tag a location.
Yeah.
So it's like, then Tigered in general could be featured.
So there you go.
on Snapchat.
Yeah, so have a hashtag. Make sure you have a
Or whatever
hashtag.
city you're in.
Yeah, have a hashtag.
Always have a hashtag.
Always have a hashtag. And then use multiple avenues to recruit. So we talked about, if there's a list of school clubs that's sort of posted at the front office, using assemblies, using different fairs, tabling at events. Oh, and we also talked about, swag. Like I remember, Haley, you said that you saw a bunch of students with matching shirts. And you're like, what's with their matching shirts? What are those about?
Yeah, and that's how I got recruited, because I was like, okay, I'll just ask about the shirts. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all matching.
Yeah.
So, and that's how I joined the shop.
Yeah. And then timing. And so we said, again, Haley was like, well, I know we started recruiting for the fall in the summer. So definitely thinking about the time. And then some of the ones that you all specifically came up with, grants specifying a topic that youth aren't interested in. So I think, and my understanding is that for the mental health grants, if that's what you're referring to, that it's mental health broadly. So I think, again, this is where we talked about before, being really clear and transparent about the partnership and saying, like, look, we have to do a project that's about mental health. So already within that, can we find something that we're interested in? And I think that, at least for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, mental health is so broad and there are so many things that can connect to it. And it's such a need for young people that I think that that's a pretty relevant area. I don't know, what do you think?
Oh, definitely. I mean, even at Tigered, when I was there, we were trying to get stuff started with mental health awareness. And I know they're actually doing a lot right now. I'm in contact with some of the people that are still there. And they just hosted this event. It was like a music event, and there was like a hangout, and people got to socialize, and they were raising money for some mental health projects at the school. So they turned, something that can be not a fun conversation to have into something where people just got to get together in the community, and Tiger High School as well. Yeah, and just kind of hang out with each other.
Cool.
Also make it happen.
So the other challenge that was typed in are, different personalities. There might be some young people who are always like the first to say something, others are more quiet, how to handle challenging conflicts. And so I would say, just having some really concrete facilitation techniques around group agreements. Like, I think the first meeting should be mostly centered around, all right, how are we going to work together? How are we going to interact with each other? And what are our agreements that we can all agree to every single time we come together? And so that might be some really good some group agreements that I always use are, step up, step back. So if you know that you're somebody who really, speaks up and jumps right in, do that, but then also leave space for others. And then you can also use different techniques around folks who need more time to process or think about something. Have people do a think, pair, share. So they write something down, an answer to a question, talk about it, and then share it out. Some other ones, and I think, again, just being, the more that you can create those personal connections between the participants and then with you as the coordinator, I think that's going to go a long way to help when conflict does arise. And being just really upfront and saying, like, we're going to have disagreements. How are we going to manage disagreements? Are we going to vote? Are we going to do, you know what I mean? Like, how are we going to work through this? What do you think?
I totally agree with that. Yeah, I mean, even still with like the SHA, we're even still navigating how we're handling that. I mean, there really are some people in our group who are just really quiet, and but if I, hang out with them and talk to them one-on-one, like when we're getting coffee before a meeting, I mean, they're talking.
Yeah,
right. They have all these ideas.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you should share that with the group. No, I don't want to. Okay. So, what if I share this part of it? And you chime in a little bit. Like, okay. So, I mean, even as a coach, I'm still navigating how to work with our SHA in that area. But I like your ideas there. I'll use them.
Oh, take them. Yeah, take them and use them. Absolutely. And so there's all kinds of different, facilitation techniques or, techniques that you can use to help adapt things to different types of personalities and different, different communication strategies. Oh, and one more thing that I thought of, and we talked about this yesterday. I think knowing why your folks are participating is really important. Like Haley brought up yesterday, there are some who want to participate because it looks good on your resume, and there are some who are participating because they care really deeply about mental health. And so just knowing that is something that would be really good, right?
Yeah, and I think shifting away, I don't know, I would just like schools to shift away from this whole club mentality kind of thing, because it just seems really shallow. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just advertised as something you just do because you're in high school and you have to get your hours. It's just this mundane thing that you have to do. And I think, the youth adult partnership appeals more to me as an individual, because that's what high school is. You're preparing to be an adult.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so definitely advocate. Cool.
All right. So we wanted to make sure we saved a good chunk of time. And I think, we've got about 10, 15 minutes or so to hear any questions that you all have. And also, because we know there are some folks that have been doing this work for a long time, if there are any other strategies that you have used to kind of address some of the common challenges that we've talked about. So we'll just wait for any questions, any strategies that you all use. We had a question, can we print the slides? Absolutely. We can send out a PDF of the slides along with the handout that I mentioned after the webinar. Oh, there's a question. One question, what is the best way to pick your students for the group? Good question. So I know that there are YACs that have done an application process. I know the statewide student health what is it called now?
SBHC
Student Health Advocate.
Sorry, I even forget.
I know. Yeah, I know that the SHA here at the Alliance has an application form,
and interviews.
Yeah, that there's a process. So you could look at that. But I think also keeping in mind and thinking about how can you get young people that maybe might not be the ones that go out for a group all the time, so that you're getting a diverse representation of the school. But I think, I don't know if there's necessarily a good way to pick it, but I would just be aware of what their interest is and being really clear and upfront about what the time commitment will be, yes, what the focus will be. If you want to say we're going to be doing something around mental health, and so that they can say oh, I'm not really interested in mental health, and I'm also on 3 other groups and also play a sport, so maybe this isn't the best thing for me, would kind of be my thinking. So I think having a really clear write-up for recruitment, and then also having some sort of application process or a statement of interest is a really good idea. Oh, yeah. We had a couple other ones. How do you avoid duplicating work already being done by other groups? Oh, good question. So I don't know. My initial thought is, if your group of young people are interested in doing something that's really similar to maybe what another YAC that you're overseeing at a different school is doing, I would say a couple of things. One, if it really is the exact same issue, do they want to do something together and kind of pool their resources?
That was my first thought.
Yeah, be
ooh, collab.
Yeah, be stronger together, or maybe look at the same issue in a different way, if you know what I mean. I can't think of a good example, but I would say if there are connections, seeing if you can bridge the connection and collaborate, or see if you can do different, different projects around the same issue. So maybe one group does a campaign to raise awareness around anxiety, and another one does a photo voice project about it or something like that. You could do different activities around the same issue. There's another one. Oh, this is from Kelby. I know this may not be available to everyone, but we piloted having YAC as a class during the school day this fall, and it worked really well in overcoming some of the common barriers, time especially.
Wait, a class?
Yeah, so Kelby is in Deschutes County, and she told me that and Kelby reminded me that you partnered with a health teacher in one of the high schools, and they've actually integrated this into the school. And that was my experience at Roosevelt here in Portland too. They use like a service learning class. And so then you have built-in time. It is in my opinion, by far like gold standard model. Like if we could get this built into school during the day in a class, it would be awesome. Yes, she did work with a health teacher.
Wow.
Okay, bye, Carlos. Then connecting with teachers and staff at the school seems to be a huge help in recruiting youth. With that being said, are there other specific recruitment examples that work best? And Kelby said it will be implemented at Bend High next year. Other recruitment strategies that work best. You know, I don't know what you think, but I would say the best recruitment strategies that I've seen are other young people. So if they're in it, or you're a previous participant saying like, to specific people, hey, do you know about the SHA or the shack? You would be great. Or if, since it's centered around health, putting up posters in a health class, asking if you can come and present in a health class, and just talking about, you know, this is what we do if you're interested in health or mental health or working in like this youth adult partnership way, you know, you want to make changes in our school, we're the group for you.
Yeah, I think definitely like, when I was a part of the shack, I was a senior, right? So, I mean, if they had used me, I would have been like, hey, yeah, I can recruit like the freshmen.
Yeah.
Or, like, I know that there's like an overlapping day when the incoming freshmen come in during the school year. So
Yes.
even then, that would be great. So, I think yeah, those are some great examples. Or even just having some sort of like recap at the end of the year that you can showcase.
Yeah.
Either at the last assembly, or you can have a poster, or they could run it on the social media page for the high school itself.
Yep.
That's
Great. And there was one, my biggest obstacle is getting started. New to the position and struggle with where to start. Goal is to start a YAC program within the high school, and any information or direction would be appreciated in a side note. Need direction. Yeah, I think we can follow up with you with like some really specific guidance points. But yeah, again, I would say connecting if you can with, you know, whether it's a health teacher, trying to find those champions in the school, and then see if there's, I don't know if there's a club that you could leverage, if there's a QSA or a, you know, some other youth leadership group as a start, and use them to spread the word. Posters, like just start posting posters up. I would say first steps, post posters, write up what the expectations are, kind of like the really clear time commitments, see when you can get meetings scheduled, if you can provide food, if it's not like at lunch or something, provide food, snacks, something.
We like
kind
snacks.
Yeah. That's always really helpful. But I think like writing up that kind of blurb about what the group is, what the expectations are, and kind of your application is a really good start.
I agree.
What would the recommended commitment time be for participants? I think that depends on what you're doing. I mean, if you're doing a participatory action research project, that's going to definitely be more time. I don't know about you, but I think it would be hard to get much done and have time to connect if you're meeting less often than once a week for less time than 45 minutes to an hour, especially at the beginning as you're building.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely more time together and just consistently meeting. I know being a part of the SHA here, it does fluctuate. Certain times of the year we're more busy, and it's expected for us to be there more often. And then other times we kind of, you know, we can meet every other week, but we check in. And that just works fine. when we have projects coming up like Awareness Day, which we just had, we are putting in more time, and that's okay.
Yeah.
What made you show up to meetings during your time with Shaq? Was it the food? Were your friends there? The projects? The coordinator?
What brought you there?
Honestly speaking, we get food every time we have a meeting here, so that was great. And since we're downtown in Portland, there's a lot of food carts we get to eat at. So we're supporting local businesses. I feel great about it. And I did join the Shack here at the OSBHA with a friend. She did move away, but that's okay. I think I would have done it even if she wasn't there with me, just because I had an interest in this. And I felt like I was supported here. So, and it was something I really needed as a senior in high school. I felt like I could develop here. And so that's why I kept coming. And just like Ashley had said, like they really do let us lead projects here. I think just letting us have a voice. And then when we do have a project, just supporting that voice and helping us guide us through the process.
I know we only have a couple minutes, but I would just want to add to what you said. And I think in a lot of different ways, and I think especially now in everything that's happening, young people want to take a stand and they want to connect. I know we talked about this yesterday. Like they're really interested in advocating for something and taking a stand and organizing and having their voice be heard. So I think you can really just leverage that and really promote this as an opportunity for them to work together and have their voice be heard about really important issues in their school.
Yeah, and I do have to say it was the coordinators as well. I had the pleasure of working with a lot of great coordinators, Lindsay, Paige, all of them, Brittany. So yeah, thank you to them.
All right. And yeah, I think that's it for us. There's my contact information, Haley's contact information. We're both open to additional questions. And again, for folks who are mental health grantees and will be at the April 5th and 6th meeting, we'll be diving into a lot more sort of concrete activities. And this has been really helpful for me, and we'll be able to incorporate that in there as well.
Yeah, and so I just have a couple other things. Our next webinar, Creating Engaging and Powerful YAC Projects, will be on Thursday, March 15th, and we'll follow up with more info in addition to sending the handout and the slides from today's meeting and a recording of the webinar as well. So thank you all so much. Thank you to Liz and Haley.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
We got this.